Welcome to the Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do podcast with your host, Tom Singer. In each episode, we explore the interesting lives of business leaders, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and others who have a healthy dose of the entrepreneurial spirit. It is time to explore something cool. Now, here is your host, Tom Singer.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. Thank you so much for pulling your chair up to the Cool Kids table for episode number 497. You know, someone told me recently that with over 700,000 podcasts in existence on Apple Podcasts, only about 1% of them ever reach 500 episodes. So I'm kind of proud of the fact that we are on our way to episode number 500, just about a week and a half away. So keep coming back and learn more. Hey, today I am going to be talking with somebody who is another podcaster. I actually met Dennis Langlais at the New Media Summit. I met him 2 years ago, first time I went to that podcasters event, and he's kind of an interesting guy. I've been kind of following him from the sidelines. He does a lot of things. There's not just one bucket I can put him into. So I think we're going to have some fun today. For those of you who kind of want to go into entrepreneurship and carve your own path in the world without necessarily having to have a single label, because I don't think you could put a label around Dennis. He's doing a lot of different things. But before I get started, I have to thank the first sponsor of this episode. So human behavior, it's a complicated thing, especially when it comes to working and living together. But understanding why and how people behave in certain ways, especially in groups, that's what my friends, Dr. Josh Packard and Megan Bissell, that's what they do for a living. Their podcast is The Bias Disruption, and they answer questions like, what's the ideal team size? How do company cultures change? And where does innovation even come from? Now, if you've ever wanted to make changes in a business, changes that last, I got to tell you, you got to be listening to The Bias Disruption. Megan and Josh, they use social science, real-world experience, and humor to share useful insights. Plus, if you ever listen to the show, you know they play really nerdy games. So check out The Bias Disruption. So let's jump into episode 497 with Dennis Langlais. So Dennis is a professional podcaster. He also has an SEO website called rankingmastery.com, and he goes around to schools and teaches kids safety, talks about bullying, staying off drugs with a group called BMX Freestylers Dream Team. BMX Freestylers Dream Team. It's a lot of words to put into one sentence. So he does all of these things. And in addition to this, he used to be a professional BMX rider. So I want to talk a little bit about that as well. So Dennis, welcome to Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do.
Well, Tom, thank you. This is great. You are pretty sharp on the fly there, I'm so noticing. You're doing all right here. Yeah, it's really exciting. I know we've been trying to connect for a while now to do our show together. And super excited to be here for sure.
Well, it's one of those things you say you're good on the fly. Go back and listen to episode 9. I'm like a robot. Welcome to Cool Thing. You know, it's like I read the whole thing. Now I just sort of get on with the guests and we play. So, you know, I didn't really have, like a formal bio of you. Plus, you're all over the map. So why don't you tell everybody, who is Dennis and what do you do?
Sure. So starting back to where my origination is I used to be a professional BMX stunt rider. That's a guy that used to go around the world traveling as a professional for sponsors like Pepsi Cola, GT Bicycles, doing stunts. You travel the world as a speaker. I used to travel the world as a bicycle stunt rider. So I got the unique opportunity to do that. And with that came so many great things that made me what I am today. Number one, obviously being a professional, you have to be the best at what you're doing. So I learned how to train. I learned how to practice. I learned discipline. I learned how to deal with sponsors. I learned how to deal with crowds. Eventually learned how to speak on a microphone. So all these great things came from this professional athletic career. From there, I started a company which used to be called Perfection on Wheels, which is now BMX Freestylers Dream Team. I sold that company in 2013, had a non-compete, had a few years I had to do a non-compete. But back in the business of helping schools educate their students in different ways, whether it's motivational, drug awareness, all these different things. So that led to, each one kind of led to the next. But in that interim middle, I was introduced to podcasting. So that's actually how I met Tom. And I learned how to podcast. I went to a conference, just like we all do, and saw this podcaster. And I said, I can do this. So Like you explained, I was a robot at first and learned how to do this amazing thing called podcasting. And I guess we'll share more about that later.
Well, let's talk really quick. Let me jump in. What's the name of your podcast and how many episodes have you done now?
Yeah, so with a 5-minute bark podcast, and I've done 380 episodes.
The 5-minute bark. It sounds like you got a dog in the background or something. How did that name come about?
So one of my companies, I started a website design company back in 2013, and I had no name. I just had the random URL I bought for my dog, codydog.com. So, and I started a company with that, and I still had all the paperwork for it. I'm like, well, I'll just use that as the parent company. I was like, well, how can I offshoot from that and 5-minute bark dog? So I just kind of whipped that together. Knowing now, I would have definitely did a little different twist after we learned about the trifecta this week. So I started it, and I just kind of look at it as a playground. It was a way to learn how to podcast. I couldn't really find any direction with it, but somehow I became an iconic podcaster with it, and the brand landed me on different shows like Grant Cardone and Russell Brunson coming on my show, and so it worked. It worked really well.
Well, one of the things that I've learned is that, the podcast has been a great way to get to interview really cool people who are doing interesting things. And when you talk to successful people, they can't help it. They have to leave a nugget, a theory, an idea behind. And so I say it on a lot of these episodes. The thing I have come to believe is like one truth is success leaves clues. And the podcast has allowed me to get around a lot of successful people like you who've created their own path, which therefore it's become sort of like my own personal university that I get to share with the whole world.
It's so true. I wish people could understand what you and I have experienced on the microphone. Whether it's tears or nuggets. Obviously you've done 400 or so, 497 episodes. I've done 380. I took about 6 or 9 months off to kind of, we'll talk about that later. But I'm going from sports athletes to, healers to wellness people to billionaires who have entered the email to, all these things, all these conversations. And I feel like I could be anything or do anything, and I can have a conversation with anybody about something and actually be intelligent about it. Right?
Well, that leads into an interesting question, because you can be anything and do anything because you've been very eclectic throughout your life. Going back to, obviously, you probably started young with the BMX and getting into the stunts and then being sponsored, but you never really went and had a corporate job. So, you can't ride BMX bikes forever. You get older and the stunts get harder and the competition gets younger, but you never went and worked for an insurance company or a bank. You've just sort of figured out, how do I craft my own way? So how did that come about?
It never came to be in the first place. So, you go from riding a bike to, everything led to the next thing, Tom. It just led to the next thing. Obviously you have a talent in front of people. So you're going to land in the showbiz, right? So you got the athletic ability, you've got the talent to talk to people. So you end up being in that area. And then all of a sudden you're a speaker, I've spoken well over 4,000 crowds. So you become a speaker. It's just all kind of defaulted, right? And then, you're too old to ride a bike, so now you have to keep this going. So now you become a manager. Now you become a marketer. Now you become an SEO person. Now, it's like, okay, this is next. Okay, this is next. So I never experienced corporate. The only experience I had with corporate is my friends that are in corporate who want to inspire and be entrepreneurial in corporate don't do too well. They end up with a severance package or, it was nice having you around.
Well, a lot of people who listen to this show, they have a job. But one of the things I discovered after 20 years was my ladder was against the wrong wall. It was nice. I was successful in the corporate job, but it really wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't what I wanted to do. And a lot of people hear that and really resonate with that because they're going to work every day and they're like, oh my God, my ladder is against the wrong wall. You never really put your ladder against a wall. You just sort of have gone out and sort of, made your own way. So what advice do you have for people who they look at what you do and how you've just sort of pieced your life together successfully? What advice do you have for someone who wants to go that path?
Well, first off, I want to commend them for working in that environment. It's not an easy environment to work in the first place. I don't know about it, but I hear about it. So I think on both ends, we both agree that it's really hard work on either side. One's more comfortable, one's, you're definitely going to get a check. There is that difference of having somebody hand you a check versus just contributing as a team and getting a check. That's one major difference between corporate and entrepreneurship. You have to literally convince somebody to hand you a check, whether it's a big one or a small one. I don't care if it's $1 or $100,000. It's kind of the same, right? So I remember trying to start my new company, and even just trying to get somebody to opt in for $1 was almost impossible. Like, I might as well just go to $5,000, right? To be an entrepreneur, you have to have a lot of energy. You have to have a lot of get knocked down and get back up. Get knocked down and get back up. There's one thing that's kind of coming to my mind right now. Is I remember somebody sharing, might even been Tony Robbins sharing about Michael Jordan, who would just practice his free throws, do 99 until he, just the fundamental basics of shooting a basketball. And that always resonated with me, even in my sports career or in podcasting or anything, is like, you need to keep your fundamentals dialed in as an entrepreneurship. You have to, because you're just going to run into a lot of turbulence, and you need some way to fall to. And if you can hit that free show shot, you can get that rebound of confidence, that rebound of moving forward. So having the fundamentals in place really help start with entrepreneurship.
So what do you love about your life now that, you're getting a little older, you're obviously not going to go apply at a bank at this point. What do you love about the lifestyle you've created?
I was thinking about this and how I was going to talk about this in your show as I was driving home to tune up my podcast studio here. Entrepreneurship to me has a meaning that at least I thought it was from the original. Now it carries many meanings, but entrepreneurship for me was being able to do anything I want to do. I went to the gym this morning till 10 a.m. I went and walked at the beach till noon, came back here, and we're doing an interview together. I do see a lot of entrepreneurs handling entrepreneurship as a corporate business. So I like entrepreneurship because I create or design a life instead of make a living. And I think Tony Robbins said that, design a life instead of make a living. And I really respect that and want to continue to do that. It's amazing that you try to make an appointment with somebody and you have to go 3 weeks out to make an appointment to hang out, to have coffee or something like that. Like, your life is that busy and you're an entrepreneur? I don't know if that's entrepreneurship to me.
Well, that's what I liked about you was last week. I said, let's get this thing scheduled. And we just scheduled it for 4 days later. And it's so interesting because I talked to somebody else the other day and they asked me to be a guest on their podcast. I said, great, the sooner the better. And she said February 1st. And I laughed out loud. I thought, okay, but I don't know what I'm doing February 1st.
Yeah. So, yeah, again, that's a whole nother hat to wear. And I commend them, but I don't know if that's entrepreneurship in my dictionary. That sounds like if you don't have openings till February, well, how does everything fit into your life?
I often think that people who are like trying to schedule for March, either they're way overworked or they've inflated their own self-importance to some sort of a fictional level.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's how much money you put in the bank. My dad always said this, and I'd always brag to him, yeah, Dad, I'm doing this. I'm traveling to England and doing a great show and doing this and podcasting and this. He's like, how much money you put in the bank? But Dad, so the bottom line is you can hustle all you want, but how much is going in the bank?
Right.
And if you're devoting your life till February, there must be a lot of money in that bank.
So what advice then? What advice do you have for somebody? You've seen a lot of people who are just, ladder against the wrong wall, struggling away, and they look at you and they're like, Dennis, you get to do whatever you want. What advice do you have for them?
Work-life balance is super important. Whether you're in the corporate world or in entrepreneurship, you really, especially now that I'm over 51 years old, I really understand that I know I can put an 18-hour day in. I've done it many times, but I don't. I quit around 3 or 4 o'clock unless I'm, of course you got deadlines sometimes, right? But I really try to make sure that I have that work-life balance of health and so on and so forth. It's just really important to balance those out because you can get more done in a life in business in 2 or 3 hours than you can in 12 if your balance is there. If you're clear on what you're going to do. It's kind of like, you kind of feel like you have to take that call. You kind of feel you have to reply to that email. But if you let them stack up enough, you can just get them all done in a half hour. And somehow, in some way, the world always will wait for you if you have a good product. It'll always wait. I went to the mall the other day and people were waiting for the iPhone. If you have a good product, they will wait and they'll be there for you. Now, I'm not saying that in an arrogant way. Again, there's differences between that. But yeah, within reason, you got to have a good work-life balance.
Well, and I think it goes also, the other piece to that is what you said when we started, and that is be the best, at what you do. I think that, if you combine what you just said with what you said earlier, I think you have a winning strategy right there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I've always been, obviously the competitive bike rider in me, everything's a competition and that could be a bad thing and a good thing at the same time. But I'm all about winning. I'm all about being the best. And it's like, okay, I did great. Next, where am I going here from here? Where am I going from here? The world loves change. It loves acceleration. It loves newness. So I just want to contribute to that as much as I can.
So Dennis, one of the things I do when I go out and speak to companies is I talk about this gap that exists between potential and performance. And so I like to ask the people who come on the show, you've seen a lot of people go out there and start a business or working on selling a product or a service, and they have a lot of potential. And some of them go far with that potential, and some people just fall into the abyss. What do you think the difference is between people who succeed and people who just can't get started, even though they have potential?
I'm around that a lot in my life. I had one of my best friends had so much potential. I almost feel like he had too much potential for his own good. And it's a tough question because if everything is just coming so easy to you, I can't speak from that. I've always been the Larry Bird where I have to work 20-hour days to get where I'm at. So I can't speak from that point of view. Just like I can't speak from a billionaire's point of view because I never had a billionaire, so I don't know what it's like to be a billionaire. There's different things that come up, but if you feel like you understand you have potential in something, and you want to make a change in the world, or you want to contribute in some sort of way, there has to be this one point where you draw the line and say, "Go for it." What do I have to lose? America is an amazing place. You can go and do something really crazy. And, you heard Steve stay on the stage this week is you can fail and you can just file bankruptcy. You don't get put in jail. You don't get beat up. Some guy's not going to come to your house and beat you with a gun. It's the land of opportunity, literally. Yes, you'll go through stress. Yes, you may lose your house. You may not. You may lose your car. You may lose something, but that's always repairable. Within 6 months to a year, you can make that money back tenfold if you find the right thing you can do. It's possible. Making six figures quickly once you've got your stride is not hard to do once you find that stride. It all goes back to fundamentals. You make one shot, you get the confidence. You make two in a row, you get more confidence. It's kind of like a guy trying to find a girl. You go into the bar, you kind of get hot, and you kind of keep rolling with it, But when you're down, you're down. But you got to understand when you're down, you got to make one shot, So I think that's really what I would say to people that have that potential is recognize it and recognize that because you have that and you've been so good at doing something so good that you should learn how to fall down and get back up.
Yeah, well, that's been the story of my life is, Steve told the story about getting sued for $6 million. I've never had that happen, but I've certainly had, take 2 steps forward and 1 big step back and feel like you're starting over. And then you just get up and take 2 more steps forward. Yeah. So Dennis, I got a couple more questions for you, but first I have to thank the other sponsor of this episode. So this episode is brought to you by Podfly Productions. Podfly takes the time and the headache out of creating your own podcast. They set you up with the right equipment, training, and guidance to ensure that you sound amazing. Podfly does all the heavy lifting and the technical work so that you could focus on creating great content, growing your audience, and interviewing really cool people like Dennis Langlais. Hey, if you want to start a podcast, and I know some of you do, jump over to podfly.net/coolthings and check out the offer that they have for the listeners of this show. So Dennis, I call the show Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. With all you're up to, what's the coolest thing you're doing in business right now?
Well, the cool thing I'm doing is doing businesses, but one of the things that I've learned that were really cool is that's helped all on my businesses, except the podcasting, because I haven't implemented it yet, is the fundamentals of SEO and how that's helped me be automated. So having 3 businesses, there has to be some sort of automation in all of them because you can't focus on all of them. So I learned how a great friend of mine showed me how to do SEO some years ago. And I keep falling, I tried to do the social media thing. I tried to be that Facebook Live guy, and I tried really, really hard to be that guy. And I wasn't that guy, So a year ago, I had to refocus on my life and go where, again, kind of going back to where my basics are. And I was like, SEO has always worked for me. It's always gotten me the attention. It doesn't roll in tons of cash, but it gives you, some help. So that was one of the things. Another thing is creating relationships. I love to make sure that every customer is happy. I just launched the BMX Freestylers Dream Team thing last year, and I'm happy to say that I've got 5 returning customers this year. That's incredible. I'm proud of myself, and I'm proud of my team for doing that. Like, that's, say they're $1,000, $2,000 a client. That now exponential going forward. The investment was worth it. But it was all about creating the relationships, making sure that they were happy. And I think that's really a cool thing that's overlooked. A lot of people overlook creating relationships because they're always after the next dollar.
And we live in a world where everybody has gotten so seduced by all the social media. We think a like, a link, a share, and a follow is worth something. But if there's no real relationship behind it, who cares? When's the last time, someone you didn't know on LinkedIn sent you a lead? Probably never. However, when you have a relationship with somebody and you're connected to them through these tools, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah. Again, it works really, really well for those that it works really, really well for. It didn't work really well for me. I had 5,000 awesome friends. I deleted it, and 2 people reached out. Mm-hmm. So what was the value there? What was all that time and effort I was putting in, hours and hours a day? How much was going into my bank account? Yeah, maybe I made $50,000, give or take, in there somewhere. If I was counting, don't hold me to that number, maybe more, maybe less, but over 2 or 3 years, that's nothing. It's like a waste of time, Whereas you could jump on a phone for 3 hours a day and you can make that no problem, So again, it works really well for some, but it's time consuming, and you have to create a persona of who you are on that area. And you're competing with people that are really good at being fake.
And some people are really good at it. I was at a conference the other day, and I met this woman, not the conference we were at, one I was at the week before. And I met this woman, and she introduced herself, and I said, "What do you do?" And she said, "Oh, I'm an influencer." And then she proceeded to tell me, because she was asking me how you weed out like being on podcasts that don't have enough listeners. And I'm like, I don't know. If you have time, just say yes. And she goes, well, then they want you to tweet about it. She goes, and I don't use my list for anybody who isn't bigger than me. And I wanted to barf in my mouth when she said that. It's like, oh, come on. Did nobody help you when you were on the way up? And then I looked at how many followers she had, and it was like 60,000 Instagram followers. And while that's a lot more than I have, that's not really what I call an influencer, but she was very proud of herself.
Yeah. We both returned from the New Media Summit, which is an incredible crowd. For you and I, there's not too many people there that resonate with our businesses, but I briefly here and there spoke about my new company. And I got this. I don't know if you can read it, but one lady sent me a card saying, I want to invest in you.
Oh, that's very nice.
Right?
That's very nice.
So for that lady that doesn't care about how many people, I got 5 cards from 5 people, I think.
Sure.
4 or 5 cards. And, one was from you. One was from you. So that's 4. 4 cards, and 3 of them were invites on podcasts, and one was that lady right there.
That's nice.
So you never know who's in your audience.
Yep.
There could be 2 people listening, and those 2 people are dying to meet somebody new.
Yep. That's awesome. And what a great term. I want to invest in you. That just sort of warms the heart when you say that to somebody.
Yeah. Who knows where it's going to go, but the fact is opportunity's there, right?
There you go. I think that's awesome. So I ask everybody who comes on the show, I always like to ask them, who is it that you admire in the world of entrepreneurship? Because let's face it, we could talk about you and your businesses and all you've done. We go and talk more about BMX racing and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, I think great entrepreneurs, I think they're observers. And I think that's one of the best lessons we get on this show is when people have all kinds of different answers. So who do you admire?
God, as an entrepreneur, God, I might get kicked off your show for this one. I don't know. I think our president is the most entrepreneurial, amazing person ever.
There's no wrong answers. We don't get political, but there's no wrong answers at all. So why do you think that?
Because he's helping the world understand polarity, and people are thinking that that's bad and they should shun him or shun anybody. But when you're in your own corner with people that do things that like you do and don't do it, that's fine. That's a good thing. The law of attractions revolved around it. Churches revolved around it. But because it's somebody saying that they don't like, they don't see that. And he doubles down on what he is. You know, I've had over 150 life coaches on my show, and they'll tell me, double down on who you are. Don't be afraid to be who you are. And, you know, I don't like a lot of things he says. I can't even believe he says some of the things he does. And, you know, I can disagree with a lot of things that he says, but he doubles down on who he is. And he's made me double down on who I am. You know, you can get scared trying to be yourself and say what you really want to say sometimes. I mean, the world's out to get this guy. And he still doubles down. He could get killed at any time, but you have to respect that. And again, I'm not looking for people to respect him, respect what he's showing us in this world. That you, if you believe in something, go for it. It may not be right. It may not be wrong. That doesn't matter. But Steve Jobs would look at that the same way. You know, everybody kind of forgets that. Carnegie was looking at it the same way. All these revolutionary people in our lifetime were the same kind of people. They were doubling down on what they believed on. And that's why we have electricity. That's why we have steel. That's why we have bridges. That's why we have all these different things. But if you go back in time and look at these people, they were disgraced. They were awful people, but they doubled down. I'm not saying they're great or good, but they showed us that if you want to do something powerful, you got to double down.
Awesome. No, good answer.
Yeah.
Hey, the last question I always ask people is what do you do to help others? Because I think that that's another thing. If we get to design our own lifestyle as we go through life, another great thing is, you know, we get to help others along the way. So how do you impact the greater good?
Yeah, you know, I was listening to a couple of your episodes, and I was like, you know, I don't have any kind of charities that I give to or anything like that, but I do help the people that work for me. I make sure that when they work for me, they learn something that they can move on in life with. They can take it somewhere else. I don't try to own people. I try to help people. And the reason my company is called BMX, one of my companies called BMX Freestylers Dream Team, is because some of the people that are actually doing the shows for me now saw me 20 years at their school, 20 years ago at their school, and the dream came true. So they're on and doing shows with me. So my philanthropy has been in sharing that, you know, you're doing this not only to make money, you're doing this to give, but, you know, make sure that you're doing it so people can pay it forward.
Absolutely. So Dennis, does somebody listen to the show and they're like, I got to know more about this Dennis guy. How do they find you? And how do they find your podcast?
Yeah. So, well, my full exposure is on my rankingmastery.com website, which is my SEO website builder thing. Basically, it's a website for people to build websites without knowing how to do websites. That's pretty cool. But yeah, my phone number and my email address is on there, right? Point blank out there. I don't really check social media anymore. I have a Facebook account, but it's only for my athletic people. I don't take on anybody else besides athletes. I just want that to be that space. As I told you, I kind of got rid of that social thing, because all they do is talk about BMX and freestyle and tricks and stunts, and there's nothing else besides that. And we're all in our own little, you know, hideaway. So, yeah.
Awesome. And then they can find the 5-Minute Bark everywhere podcasts are offered, I assume.
Yes, on iTunes, 5-Minute Bark podcast. Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome.
And that's at 5minutepark.com.
5minutebark.com. Awesome. Well, Dennis, thank you so much for being a guest here on Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody who tuned in. I say it every single episode. If it wasn't for the audience, there'd be no show. So do me a favor. If you like the show, tell a friend. I talk to people all the time. How'd you find the podcast? Oh, my sister told me, or my boss told me. So if you like the show, go tell somebody else. We're trying to grow it. We're coming down 3 episodes away from episode number 500. So you can go back into the archives and listen to a lot of good ones. We've got some new stuff coming ahead. So every day, go out there and try something new. My motto in life is try new things. It's changed my whole life in the last 3 years since I've started saying yes to different things. So go out there and try something new. And while you're at it, have a great day.
Thank you for being part of the Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do podcast. Without your participation and listening to these conversations, there is no show. Connect with Tom at tomsinger.com and follow him on Twitter at tomsinger.